Excuse me, everyone. Hi, everyone. We are about to start. Please take your seat. Please take your seat. We're about to start our session. You need some help with the translation. So I start? Hi, everyone. I will be starting shortly. Please take your seat. Honorable Ministers, Excellencies, dear colleagues and friends, it is my pleasure to welcome you all to the Transformative Education Pre-Summit Ministerial Roundtables. My name is Nhial Deng. I'm a South Sudanese refugee right and community activist, and I'm a member of the Canada Refugee Education Council, and I'll be your moderator for the first part of the roundtable. In the Youth Forum yesterday, and during the discussion today, we have heard several enlightened discussions on how education transformation needs to happen through the collective efforts of many people and with a diverse range of voices at the table. In this segment, we will see how transformation of education will actually take place through concrete action in countries through a series of ministerial statements. As you all know, the overall objective of the pre-summit is to harness the evolving discussions on transforming education to elaborate initial content suggested action for the summit and generate greater momentum to the lead of the main summit in New York. The Ministerial Roundtable provides a forum to share perspective of countries, especially those that have advanced in their national consultations, on the identified key elements and commitment to transform education. The exchange and discussions are expected to inspire other countries to come forward with bold commitment and action at the summit in September. When you talk about the transforming of education, we are talking about fundamental changes to the way study schools and other education system and institution work, but also changes to the way that education opportunities are structured. Improvement to our existing system will not be enough. we need a conversation about creating different education systems. Transformation must be an intergenerational project that leads us to something that is bold, new, and renewable. As a refugee youth advocate, I see the added value of including young people in decision-making processes. Young people must have a seat at the table, and their voices must not just be listened to. Their contributions must also be converted into concrete action. I'll be inviting each minister to give a 3-minute intervention to share their country perspective and their commitment to advance, and their commitment in advance of the Transforming Education Summit in September. They'll be focusing on 3 main questions. First, the recovery step their country has taken in the wake of COVID-19. Secondly, how education in their country should be transformed to shape peaceful, prosperous, just, and sustainable future. And lastly, the practical and financial commitment required to undertake these changes. Please note that there are reserved seats at the front of the room for all speakers and the 1+. On the screen behind me, you can see the list of speakers in the order they will be making their statement. I ask ministers to make their way to the stage in good time before their statement, as we have a very packed agenda. I would like to invite to the stage the distinguished ministers of Algeria, Andorra, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Brazil, Burundi, Central African Republic, and Chad. Please make your way to the stage. Each minister will take a seat, and then I'll be inviting them to come and give a 3-minute statement here on the desk. I'll name the countries again: Algeria, Andorra, Bosnia, Brazil, Burundi, Central African Republic, and Chad. You can just put it on. Yeah. It is my great pleasure to welcome the first speaker of the first part of the session, the distinguished Minister of National Education in Algeria. Please make your way to the desk and give a 3-minute statement.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. سيدة الوزراء الحضور.
Considering that the success of any policy depends on the development of human capital, the Algerian state gives a very special place to the promotion of education, which is really anchored in the action plan of the government, stemming from the program of the president of the country, of the republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune. When it comes to the impact of COVID on pupils, we saw impacts of a psychological nature and of a pedagogical nature. Regarding these psychological issues, students were supported with the help of school and career counsellors as well as psychologists. With regards to issues of a teaching nature, we did see a slight drop in teaching materials brought about by an exceptional situation regarding the organisation of schools, which meant that there was a reduction in school teaching time as well as an alternation of teaching subgroups. So the measures to take. We had to identify in a formal way and through the help of evaluation tools all of the untaught classes, then develop a way to set up remedial classes. We also needed to establish new teaching plans in order for inspectors to participate and teachers to participate so that these classes could finally be given. We also needed to strengthen remedial classes. So, how can education be transformed for a future focusing on peace? School programs need to promote values that respect certain factors or elements such as peace, respect for the other, tolerance, and all of this while respecting their national values, but at the same time being open to universal values. We also need to make sure that these new programs can help young people face up to the challenges of tomorrow, notably regarding protection of the environment and issues related to sustainable development and appropriate behaviours. We also need to make sure that students are able to defend themselves and to really understand what is at stake when it comes to the use of information communication technology. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Our next speaker is the Distinguished Minister of Education and Higher Education in Andorra.
Ministros, señoras y señores.
Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, it's an honour for me to be able to address you during this pre-summit on the transformation of education. After many long months conditioned by the pandemic and the impact that it had on young people and on the school system in general, in 2021 and 2022, we put in place a series of measures destined for pupils and teachers. We, for example, set up a campaign so that we could detect any cases of COVID amongst teaching staff or students. We also set up teaching or training plans so that teachers were able to use the digital technology at their disposal, and also to help them from a psychological point of view so that they would be able to better control any emotions that they may have been provoked by the pandemic. We also try to give support to parents so they could help their children with their schoolwork. Indeed, there was a alternation between in-person and distance learning based on the needs of the different schools at different moments. We continue to make sure that learning is a priority with special attention for students with disabilities. Our health minister took measures to fight against the negative effects of the COVID pandemic, with a special focus as well on young people and adolescents, youngest children and adolescents, making sure that there was comprehensive and adapted psychological aid or support open to children from the age of 6 years and up provoked by the pandemic. We are now trying to live with this new reality in Europe, and now we see that we are faced with a war that is calling into question our desire for a sustainable and war-free future. We need to make sure that we can have teaching of quality, and this means a democratic future, inclusive education, multilingual education, so that we can allow for intercultural dialogue. Indeed, we need to make sure that cooperation, participation, peaceful coexistence can guide our teaching practices. This is why we have made many changes to our education system in terms of what we teach them, so that they can learn different skills linked to these values. They need to be able to have a critical thinking so that they can face up to the major social, political and environmental challenges that the world faces. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Our next speaker is the distinguished Minister of Civil Affairs and of Bosnia and Herzegovina in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Please take the stage. Thank you.
Fellow ministers, dear friends, it is my honor to be here today to promote Bosnia and Herzegovina's results achieved this far in the process of transforming education and to announce the priorities that the country has agreed upon to support in the next decade, as well as we all, I believe, hereby stand committed to push for maximum efforts in achieving Agenda 2030. Now, I am very happy to say that Bosnia and Herzegovina already went through the full process of consultation in the country, having consulted with different target groups. Among many aspects of education priorities during above-mentioned consultations, we have recognized that many aspects need to be improved, but on this occasion, I will emphasize two of them: access to education and rapid redesign of quality of education for the next decade. When we talk on access to education, some of our short-term measures will be: perform an assessment of learning losses among students at all levels of education, define the terminology and include online blended hybrid teaching in legislative acts, continuously and systematically strengthen education systems in use of digital tools through introduction of online blended hybrid teaching, support mental health and well-being of children and youth through the existing models of good practice. I consider this of the utmost importance after the pandemic. Establish and support training centers for teachers at universities, focused on teachers. Increase the enrollment in preschool education, both in the year before starting school and for other age groups, especially for children from vulnerable groups. Ensure equal access to primary, secondary and higher education, reduce early dropouts and school leaving. Our second priority revolves around quality delivery of education, and in accordance, Bosnia and Herzegovina will work on mid-term and long-term measures, among of some are: improve the education infrastructure, ensure better transition and mobility of students in and between different levels of education, design and implement curricular reforms based on learning outcomes in Bosnia and Herzegovina education systems, to enable children and students in acquiring the knowledge, skills and competencies required for living and working in the 21st century. Invest in scientific research capacities and improving the mobility of teaching staff and students, as well as developing a culture of innovation in education. Invest in capacity building of teaching staff at all levels of education by strengthening the digital and PPDM competencies necessary to achieve a quality educational process in the 21st century. Those are only some of priorities of Bosnia and Herzegovina that have been defined during the implemented consultations. I honestly hope that those priorities find its place in the documents that will be a result of this pre-summit work, but as well of summit that will take place in autumn in New York. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Our next speaker is the distinguished Minister of Education in Brazil.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be here in Paris to participate in the Transforming Education Pre-Summit and its side events. Education is a human right that must be respected for the consolidation of citizenship. As it's widely known, education has been mainly linked to reading, writing, and counting skills. However, it became clear that we should go beyond. We must prepare our students, notably the most vulnerable ones, for living in these fast-changing societies. Every person must be able to use digital technologies and to shape the world they want to live in. Directly addressing the guiding questions, Brazil is seriously committed to face the impacts of COVID on learning. We understand education as a constitutional right and a responsibility not only for the state, but also for the family and society as a whole. To this end, we have been working to lead the country in the direction of the necessary innovations for education. Since 2021, we have launched a set of articulated actions that are part of our national strategy to recover learning in the post-pandemic context and to transform the Brazilian education. These actions are organized in pillars: student re-engagement, diagnosis of learning gaps with customized teaching, social-emotional care with society and families engagement, and reduction of inequalities. The active search is the first step towards the re-engagement of those students who left school in the educational system. Last April, we launched a national campaign on radio, TV, and social media called Dial 100. We called for society to get involved in order to actively look for those who may have left school. The second challenge is knowing every student's learning gaps and addressing it. We need to assist the teacher in the classroom to identify learning gaps and assemble a strategy for a personalized recovery. It is about teaching for the right level. Hence, the Diagnostic and Formative Assessment Platform was created and is now in use by more than 2,100 municipalities and near 5 million students in Brazil. We combine technology with methods to help diagnose and monitor student learning and using a continuous process approach. In addition, we launched the Education and Family Program to bring parents and the school community together in this returning challenge, and we provide training for well-being in the school context that has already exceeded 100,000 teachers enrolled. Under the pillars of reducing inequalities, increasing efficiency, ethics, in the use of public resources, we will focus the efforts in two of the most vulnerable regions of the country, the North and the Northeast. Our policies are preceded by dialogue processes, and we commit to engage and keep engaging all stakeholders to transform and provide quality education for all. Thank you all. Merci beaucoup. Obrigado.
Thank you, Your Excellency. First, I understand. So if I call you, you happen to be down in the audience, to walk to the main stage and stand. Speaks distinguished national education and scientific Burundi.
Mr. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It's an honor and a pleasure to take the floor before you today. We have already done in our country, Burundi. Begin by us. Burundi, like all countries, was hard hit. Schools did not close down. That's why, Burundi, we think in terms of the promotion of learning and also the introduction of equality, which assist pupils in familiarizing them with new IT and communication tools. The Burundi system as of 2005 adoption policy in primary education 20 2007 reorganization of the educational system with and we showed the developments of education. Now, concerning transformation of education, Burundi has organized a conference on education, which an regional to guide on this transformation into the national conference, and those meetings were held in June 2022. Following that conference, a number of actions were formulated in order to identify possible solutions. Some of them as follows: the establishment
supporting teachers, embracing the
represent with my
policy. A lot of funding available, but it doesn't actually get the ground field. And partners and feeding into the developments with mode of management has been all in strength access levels, school level, through an educational equitable, excellent quality education, training, and employment articulation in order to combat the unemployment, to adapt the such as that we the COVID-19 pandemic, and a tax system to large companies in order to education include Burundi education time is going to make contribution to reaching our national these may turn on their the reforms that are underway, but rather contribute to the improved.
Thank you. Speaks the distinguished in the Republic.
Thank you for giving me the floor. The South African Republic been through decades of political crises that have hard hit the education. And crisis, like the political crisis, at least there's the COVID-19 pandemic, which came on top of all of this, to the closure of educational for 6 months. In order to up to the difficulty, other countries face the problem as well as is other countries and for the entire continent. So I'm to move to the solution. Government of education introduced. We've identified priority in 3 areas. Of all, the hiring of teaching and train and educational levels. Furthermore, it's important to encourage the recession of the sector, the recent crises, this really very young between 5 years of age, very significant national strategy education. You know that during the crisis, that to go out in the field, they refused. It's a very peculiar situation of the Central African Republic. Community teachers, actually in our countries, who were the teachers, citizens, parents, who felt that the school was sacred, so they replaced teachers. They stepped into the shoes of teachers in order to teach their children. We've seen, in fact, that some parents were not really teaching, but they were distorting education, and that's been a real problem too. So that's the first thing. And secondly, we think it's important to boost the mobilization of resources, particularly commitment on the part of the government, which is already starting to emerge. But we'd like, in that context, to reiterate the importance of technical and financial support coming from different partners who provide assistance to us in education. And I'm thinking particularly of UNICEF, the World Bank, and a number of other bodies and organizations as well. That's the second priority. It's really extremely important that this exists in order to support our education. Then we have the third priority. We have to boost our efforts as regards inclusive learning, and particularly for vulnerable children and girls. Girls are affected by this problem of education in Central Africa. So we need to have a plan, we need to have tools in order to promote community dialogue. The crisis has created a veritable ethnic conflict. And sometimes the consequences have spread elsewhere in the region. So it was important too to come up with a curriculum that would deal with this aspect in order to encourage coherence and peace in schools, in order to avoid a repetition of future conflicts or crises. Now, there have been efforts that have been deployed before the crisis, but we had to continue working on this and gather in information in order to avoid veering off. It's really important to have a good handle on managing the situation. So we're trying to boost the number of female teachers in the schools. We see that in other countries, most teachers are women. So they really do have to be involved in teaching activities, educational activities. They have a number of advantages. They are there to shape children in the families, even before we move on to the school structures. And we think that such undertakings, if they are carried out correctly, will lead to an education that will allow the expression of the full range of human diversity and will make it possible to improve our country, which has truly suffered as a result of the military and political crisis. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency, and to the other speakers as well. I will now please ask you to make your way off the stage, and I would like to invite to the stage the next speakers. Thank you. For the next segment, for the next segment, I would like to invite the distinguished ministers of education in Cuba, Guinea, Maldives, Mauritius, Mongolia, and Nepal. Please make your way to the stage. Thank you so much, Your Excellency. Next speaker is the First Minister of Education of Cuba.
Participants, I'd like to thank UNESCO for the invite to this event. It's going through several crises, inequality, and therefore we see education is important. Right now, it is a period of reflection for education regarding its future. Indeed, we can look at education as all society. There is education as a common good. The idea of carried out a national consultations as a way of giving us a tool to be able to help humanity decide the future of education. Indeed, this is also something that, of course, is being headed by United Nations agencies. This national consultation focused on each of the different areas or priorities, and there was a consensus that COVID-19 had a major impact on education and a real impact psychologically on pupils and teachers. We therefore need to reflect on the education that existed before and the education that will exist after the pandemic. In 2021, our scientists were able to very quickly be able to produce the vaccines needed so that we could vaccinate all children over the age of 12. We have also had to improve the way that our schools are run so that they are environments that can promote health as well as the participation of everyone. We agree that curriculum should include key basic skills related, for example, to digital technology. We also need to make sure that civic and political participation are included in curricula as well. We also focused in our country on the issue of education for sustainable development and education and educating people for tomorrow's labour market. We also need to make sure that we are transforming education in our country with this in mind. We need to make sure that we can build capacity so that we can have hybrid models that allow for learning to take place continuously. We need to make sure that we are looking at cross-cutting issues so that we can have research initiatives that can help us to improve teacher training and the quality of teaching. We are focusing very much on technology in education and the different kinds of platforms that teachers can use and have at their disposal. This is something we're looking at a lot. In Cuba, 12.4% of our budget is dedicated to education, and all children have access to education in our country. Around 33% of those who were surveyed spoke about the major issues that they were facing in terms of problems linked to income. And this is another issue that we, of course, have to address. Ladies and gentlemen, Cuba has made many decisions to try and strengthen our education system and make it resilient. Indeed, we believe that the summit that has been called for from the Secretary General gives us a clear responsibility to have to create a world that is one that is sustainable for today's generation and for future generations. Thank you very much.
Speaker is the Distinguished Minister of Pre-Education and Literacy of the Republic of Guinea.
Bonjour à tous. L'éducation, comme l'autre le disait.
Good afternoon to you all. Education is the most powerful weapon to transform the world. I think that that is the right way of putting things, because education is indeed the strongest weapon to transform the world. And there are four things needed to succeed. It's like a vehicle on four wheels: the state, the parents, the pupils, and also the teachers. So I'm going to read our message to you. On behalf of the government of Guinea and our president, we'd like to express congratulations for organizing this pre-summit on transforming education. The government of the Republic of Guinea has been involved in the coordination work on education, and I am going to run through what we are committed to in order to accept the challenge of education and training and rethink education for the future. The results, the preliminary results, show that in Guinea, significant progress has been made in recent times concerning access to good quality education and a resistant and resilient system. This is boosted by the implementation of the 2019-2029 10-year program. We're aware of the challenges that have still to be met. Many young people and adolescents are excluded from the education system. Significant numbers, particularly of girls, and these are the figures that we have from 2018. There's an urgent need to construct several thousand of classrooms, particularly in rural areas. 1,500 points of water, wells, have to be developed. There are many children who don't have the adequate level of reading and numerical literacy. 11% of the 15 to 24-year-olds are excluded from the educational and professional system. The student-teacher ratio is distorted, and there's a massive shortage of truly qualified teachers. The funding of the education and training sector falls short of the interventions that are required. It should, in fact, be 20% in 2022. It's only reached 12%. All of these challenges to be met. And there was also making use of the experience that we've had following the COVID-19 pandemic and the need to rethink education. Between now and 2030, we're going to be deploying our efforts in order to move towards a significant transformation of the Guinean educational system through a strengthening of our own procedures, through the implementation of multi-donor approaches in line with the Paris Declaration. A community-level structure with new school infrastructures to be introduced, particularly in neglected areas, support for community educational centers, and the development of public kindergartens in the different regions, involvement of all actors, including the community responsible for the management of the education system from the lowest to the highest possible level, the development of regional schools of crafts, which will lead to the development of qualified people in the different sectors, the rollout of apprenticeship centers, post-primary and post-secondary, the idea being to encourage apprenticeships for young people who have dropped out of the school system, expanding public universities with a return to the university campuses and their equipment, increasing national funding for education and development of skills and competences, and mechanisms to be introduced for innovative funding from other sectors, and that includes from the private sector. Improved coordination of public aid, ODA, improving the quality and the effectiveness of public expenditure on education, strengthening everything that relates to education. The catchment area for school radio has to be spread and involve all levels of education. Digital citizenship is vital, as is well-being, safety and security. Updating the skills and competences of different stakeholders throughout their life. Introduction of citizenship, global citizenship to the curriculum. Sustainable development as well are required. The programs and the curricula have to be reviewed and revised in a constructive fashion in different sectors in order to make them better aligned to the world of employment, going beyond the funding level of 20% between now and 2030. Guinea already enjoys support from a number of donors, but the country still needs you in order to meet the challenges for the children of the country and for education in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Our next speaker is the distinguished Minister of Education and Science in Mongolia.
Excellencies, the ministers, vice ministers, ladies and gentlemen, very good afternoon. Please allow me to share some ideas and comments generated from national consultations for transform education in Mongolia. The concerning exclusive, equitable, and safe, healthy schools, you've expressed their needs for continued implementation of both online, in-person, hybrid learning platform. Within the scope of the safe schools, one of the significant discussions of youth was the concern about mental health, social-emotional skills. We have faced challenge of children depression, anxiety, fear due to COVID pandemic, school closure, and staying out from peers, the school community for a long time. We created new posts in the school as school psychologists and provided support services through in-person and online platform. You've also emphasized on meta skills, thinking about thinking, learning to learning, emotional regulation, goal-oriented skills, empathic skills that are most crucial to recover from learning loss, be adaptive to evolving society. Under Digital Nation Initiative, Digital Literacy for All national program has been implemented through formal, informal, and non-formal learning. This is one of the urgent actions to scale up citizens' digital skill. The digital divide is one of the major challenges for Mongolia to promote Digital Nation Initiative. In this regard, government of Mongolia has been making effort to eliminate digital divide in cooperation of PPP models, private-public partnership. Regarding education financing, the research community has expressed that unit cost estimated needs to be carried out in order to enhance efficiency in education sector. By 2022, education financing has reached 5% of GDP, as well as 15% of physical budget. National Open Platform for Students and Teachers also established and now being used over 1 million users, including students. This platform enables all children and youth to access lessons of the best quality teachers in the country, regardless where they live. The stakeholders in consultation jointly agreed that the platform promoted inclusive and equal opportunity of learning for all children and youth. I would like to conclude national consultation held within framework on transforming education initiative of UN Secretary General has been organized ongoing discussions on adopting amendment of education laws in my countries. Thank you very much for giving me opportunity to share our ideas, learn from colleagues from different countries on transforming education in this crucial and critical moment. At the end, there is Mongolian well-known proverb, time is not always the same, the grass not always green, thus education must be transformed. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Our next speaker is the distinguished Honorary Minister of Education, Science and Technology in Nepal.
Thank you. Their Excellencies, the Minister, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to express this national commitment on behalf of the Government of Nepal and the stakeholders that are engaged in the Nepal school education sector, including development partners, civil society, teachers, professional organizations, UN agencies, academia, duty barriers, and the children and youth, as well as their parents and teachers. Nepal wishes to express its commitment to, firstly, to undertake a comprehensive analysis of the learning loss and allocate and leverage adequate additional resources to allow children to catch up, reach, or return to an age-appropriate learning level. As part of this recovery roadmaps, Nepal commit to making additional financing and the programming available to reach children who are badly affected in the learning process due to the pandemics. Nepal future commit to strengthening the education sector to emerge better from the pandemic by scaling up remedial teaching and the accelerated learning programs. Secondly, to put teachers at the center of the transforming the Nepal education system. For this, Nepal commits to invest in the professional development and the human resources system in the education sector to produce and maintain competent and motivated teachers. Recognizing the teachers and the most important determinant of the learning outcomes, Nepal commits to undertake reform to attract new teachers and continue their professional developments. Thirdly, to support the adaptation of the national education target and the benchmark into local level education sector plans. For this, Nepal will develop a comprehensive framework to support its local government as per their need to establishing resilience education system in place that enable them to provide inclusive and quality education and cater to the need of the children in their commitment and the context. Finally, to increase public financing for the education to meet the commitment and the global benchmark of 20% by 2030. In order to meet this commitment, it is clear that increased resources are a must commit to the continue increasing the share of the education budget in its national and the sub-national budget to reach and maintaining the global benchmark of 20% before 2030. To achieve this goal, national consultation has been initiated and will continue for the months to come to further specially contextualize and validate these commitment for them to be presented at the Global Summit in September thereafter. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, and all the other speakers. I will now ask you all to please make your way off the stage. Thank you very much. We have had a very inspiring statement from education ministers across the world about the work they're doing in their countries to transform education. I hope this set a great promise to an exciting lead up to the Transform Education Summit in September, and also a prosperous path toward the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. In the lead up to the summit, youth from across the world were invited to share the innovative ideas on what they have done or what they hope to do to transform education in their communities. Before the next part of this session, we have compiled some of the videos young people sent to us to hopefully remind us why we are here in Paris to exchange ideas and practices and to hear from the voices of young people. There will be a 5-minute video that will play, and then for the next part, I'll pass the floor to my wonderful colleague, Ms. Haldis, Holst, who will moderate the next portion of the program. Thank you very much.
Temilade Salami. I'm 24 years old. I currently live in the United Kingdom. Transforming education means empowering learners and preparing them for the future of work and planetary sustainability by mainstreaming education for sustainable development into our curricula. Education for sustainable development gives learners the values, skills, and agency to address the interconnected global challenges in the world. So it is very important that we make our curricula fit for the future of work so as to empower young people to be agents of change.
Hello, my name is Cody Freeman. I'm 30 years old and I'm here in Bangkok, Thailand. Transforming education means creating a world where LGBTQI+ youth are free. And we do that by having an inclusive curriculum, building spaces free from violence, bullying, and discrimination, and fostering networks of parents, teachers, admin, and policymakers in order to cultivate better mental health and a greater sense of belonging.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Coralie, j'ai 25
Hello, my name's Coralie. I'm 27 years old and I'm from France. Today, knowledge is available everywhere through the internet. Schools should therefore offer us more than that and should educate us in the human values and social skills that we all need, regardless of our path. I'm talking, for instance, about empathy, inclusion, resilience, everything that will allow us to become the best version of ourselves, to better collaborate and to better serve the common good. That's why today I'm working to create workshops on these concepts.
Hello everyone, my name is Nhial Deng. I'm a South Sudanese refugee, writer, and community activist. I spent 11 years in the Kakuma refugee camp in Kenya and now attend college in Canada. For young refugees like myself, education is the most powerful tool that we can use to secure a more full and brighter future, not just for ourselves and for our communities. As we build momentum toward the Transforming Education Summit and ensuring that we achieve SDG 4 by 2030, let's commit to leaving no child behind and ensure that every child everywhere can have access to safe and quality education. Education is hope, empowerment, and progress. For every child, everywhere, a chance to learn. Thank you so much.
Hello, my name is John. I am 13 years old. I am Korean, but I live in Tunisia. I'm a homeschooler. So, how do I study at home in Tunisia? Well, I'm going to talk about the digital education. The cool thing about it is that people like me can access any resources if there's an internet. Thanks to digital apps, I can study with friends from other continents.
Hello, my name is Veronica Bella Hingis. People call me Bella. I would like to discuss teachers and the teaching profession. As a math teacher, I'm aware that to educate students, you design human beings. Right now, students are learners, but in the future, they are leaders, executives, professionals, or more. So it's important for them to develop learning agility. We must help them to prepare it and to improve that. How? By guiding them how to learn, adapt, unlearn, and relearn.
Pour pouvoir transformer l'éducation, nous devons nous assurer que
In order to transform education, we have to ensure that our schools are protected from the threats of climate change. Extreme weather and natural disasters such as cyclones and rainstorms are a constant threat to learning environments, especially in small island developing states. I urge you today to act now for our children of tomorrow so that they may learn everywhere in a safe and healthy environment.
People who submitted those videos, including my co-moderator, Nhial. Thank you for moderating the first session. Honorable ministers, excellencies, dear colleagues and friends, it is my pleasure to welcome you to the second part of the pre-summit ministerial roundtable. My name is Haldis Holst. I'm a teacher, and I'm Deputy General Secretary of Education International, the Global Union Federation for Unions in the Education Sector. Transformation means fundamental changes to educational processes and opportunities worldwide. Transforming education means going beyond reforms that improve our education systems and our educational practices. Rather than better versions of existing systems, transformation results in education systems different from today. Transforming education also means supporting teaching and learning that is transformative for learners. Transformative education empowers as it connects people to each other and the world, exposes them to new possibilities, and strengthens their capacities for critique, dialogue, knowledge creation, and action. As a teacher, I want all students to be able to influence their education. I am convinced that including young people and teachers in the conversation on how to transform education is key to ensuring we find the right tools. In the following part of the session, we will hear reflections from countries on what features of education are most important to continue, strengthen, and/or safeguard. We look forward to hearing what in current education policy and practice needs to be abandoned. Also, we have asked the speakers to provide innovative approaches identified that can serve as levers for game-changing transformations of education policy and practice. And with that, I would now like to welcome the first ministers to join me on the stage, and these are the distinguished ministers of Niger, São Tomé and Príncipe, Seychelles, South Sudan, and Togo. Please join me on stage. Was a bit optimistic there. No ministers here to join me on the stage, but that means that we have time left. So I have the opportunity to invite some vice ministers and deputy ministers to speak. And I thought that I would invite them one by one on the stage. We may be lucky and some more ministers may come because we are a little bit ahead of schedule here. But I hope protocol will allow me then to go further and go to the deputy ministers. So I would like to ask whether the Deputy Minister of Education, Science, Culture and Sport of the Republic of Armenia is here. Fantastic, and the distinguished minister, please come to the stage and give their statement.
Thank you. Distinguished colleagues, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, I'm privileged to represent Armenia at this panel discussion, and I want to take the opportunity and thank UNESCO for hosting this very important event. Actually, the discussions on education transformation that are taking place globally with these sessions also here and with the UNESCO summit come right on time for Armenia, as our country is currently in active stage of educational reforms and in decision-making on the development of education for the next 10 years, up to 2030. I'm sure that the national consultations that we are currently holding, as well as the reflections here from these sessions will make through our participation in these sessions, will eventually enable us to streamline all key elements of transformational approach in all the key documents that currently are on the table, and hence it will secure that our education policies embrace the key ideas and thoughts for securing transformational education. Amid the national consultations that are currently being placed, and by the way, we will have the major stage in the upcoming week or two, I can already state that there are a couple of elements that stand at the backbone of our vision for educational reforms and transformational education. This is all about the following. So accent on skills, attitude, values, and on top of the knowledge. Here the skills can imply both to diverse types of literacy, such as like media literacy, cyber literacy, financial literacy, etc., as well as key assets that shape the attitude of learners, like the active citizenship, care towards the mother nature, etc. A learner-centric and rights-based approach. All should have access to quality education regardless of their age and regardless of their geographic location. This is about the right to education for learners in remote and isolated areas of the country. That is our priority to secure. No one should be left behind. We should secure the right to education and the continuity of education regardless of political conflicts and crisis situation. Here I want to refer to the words of Madame Azoulay early in this morning, so that like children in Nagorno-Karabakh should have the right to education. Of course, we are not in active stage of conflict that was unleashed by Azerbaijan back in 2020, in fall 2020, but still we should do all our best to secure the right to education for the learners in Nagorno-Karabakh, regardless how long it will take to find a solution to the conflict itself. Increased adaptability of educational system to address the labor market demands, which means the adaptability of the educational programs that are typically more conservative. Accent on strengthening the usage of technology in education. Result-oriented approach, which means more and more space for teachers, educators, educational staff, and institutions to apply innovation in their everyday learning process. Interrelations with the external world, so being locally rooted but also globally informed. Constant dialogue with key stakeholders, not just the state stakeholders, but also the civil society and the youth particularly. As it means like increased and disproportionate in a positive sense financing to education. So Armenia has increased its budget allocations to education, and this is the trend we are going to follow in the next years to come. We should understand, after all, that the expenditure in education, this is not just a budget allocation, but this is investment to sustainable development, inclusive growth, and resilient society. We are determined to continue consultations with all our key stakeholders in Armenia and out of Armenia, all development partners, and of course, first of all, with the youth, to make sure that we identify the right areas for change. So for change, and I hope that by September, during the September summit, we will have already a full list of commitments that we are going to take and follow. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency, and thank you also for being ready and willing to speak at such short notice. I would now like to call the distinguished Deputy Minister of Education from Ghana, So the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, the Vice President of Education International, Your Excellencies, colleagues, and friends. I'm excited to share Ghana's intervention in transforming education and remediation that we have conducted for learning losses that were occasioned by COVID-19. In Ghana, we are leapfrogging inequality, and we are reimagining education, focusing on outcomes and transforming the education system to deliver Education 4.0 for Industry 4.0. In addressing learning losses occasioned by COVID and some fundamental challenges that were evident even before the advent of COVID, we have undertaken some innovative and outcome-driven interventions to cure learning poverty and ensure learners acquire functional literacy and numeracy skills. National Reading Radio Program and digital learning were deployed as some of the interventions at the peak of COVID to ensure that learners did not mismatch. And also, as an attempt to address learning poverty, we administered the latter part of last year a standardized test, national standardized test across the public schools we have in the country. We administered the first batch to P4 learners. That is to ensure that we get the weaknesses at learner level in literacy and numeracy. We are at the final stages of the resource analysis, and that is giving us indication where we must course correct in the next academic year. The current government's free senior high school policy and the free school feeding program, the pre-tertiary education competency-based curriculum and the standard-based curriculum, retooling of technical and vocational education and training at all levels, and many gender and equality in education initiatives are few of the examples of interventions that we are busy with. At the tertiary level, we have made strides to integrate 21st century learning skills and competencies into the curriculum and the promotion of entrepreneurship in education. In Ghana, we have established STEM schools at various levels, and in particular senior high schools in recent years. And this is to demonstrate government's commitment and the determination to transform education and attain improved human capital. The Ghanaian culture promotes community engagement, and this is evident in the Maiden Transforming Education National Consultation meeting held on the 16th of June this year in Accra. The forum brought together 115 face-to-face participants and 78 virtual participants from all 16 regions of the country. Youth representation and engagement at the forum was impressive. 5 breakout sessions led by internationally selected facilitators discussed each of the 5 Transforming Education Summit thematic action tracks. During the plenary, participants offered reflections and thoughts that offered the national convener and his team valuable information and feedback as a first step towards the selection of Ghana's thematic action track. Synthesizing the thoughts and reflections led to the questions: to what end do all the thematic action tracks aim at? Responses from many participants pointed to one significant answer: to develop learners and graduates with the requisite 21st century skills and competencies needed to thrive. In closing, I wish to reiterate the commitment of Ghana to the transformative actions contained in the ministerial communique earlier agreed upon at the pre-summit, and indicates strongly that we remain committed to the ideals and aspirations of the United Nations Secretary General's Transforming Education Summit initiative. Together, we will and we must transform education to recover pandemic-related learning losses, to reimagine education for today's world and tomorrow's world, and to revitalize national and global efforts to achieve sustainable development goal 4. I thank you very much for your attention.
And thank you, Your Excellency. Our next speaker is a distinguished Deputy Minister of Education, Culture, Research and Technology of the Republic of Indonesia, who will also speak on behalf of the G20 countries. And after her, if I can give forewarning, that I can ask Kazakhstan to be ready as the next speaker.
Distinguished ministers, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. On behalf of the Ministers of Education, Culture, Research and Technology of the Republic of Indonesia, please accept our gratitude for the invitations to participate in this important event and to talk today about our effort to transform education that were also discussed during the national consultations. Ensuring inclusive and equitable quality education and promoting the lifelong learning for all, as outlined in SDGs Goal 4, is the core of our approach to transforming education. Through Merdeka Belajar, or emancipated learning policy, we are bringing learners' unique strengths and needs to the forefront of our education policy. In addition to strengthening our commitment to allocate at least 20% of the national budget for education, the Indonesian government has reformed funding across all levels of education, from the equitable and fair distributions of school funds at primary and secondary education to higher education scholarships, provide grants to joint research by industry and universities, and postulate education's endowment fund in line with Action Track 5. We have also transformed vocational education by enhancing collaborations between the world of education and the business and industrial sectors in line with the Action Track 2. Business and industry now have a greater input to the designs of curriculums, to the provisions of instructors, and up to learning assessment. This innovative action is supported by our two special funds, competitive and matching fund. And to further encourage the involvement of industry, the government of Indonesia since 2019 issued so-called tax deductions incentive of 200% for business organizations that carry out vocational activities. The new ministry has also changed the punitive and high-stake testings of the national exams into the national assessment, which now evaluates the foundational competence of literacy, numeracy, and characters. This is supported by the development of a new curriculums focused on the students' abilities and needs while developing their goals and community perspective. Our commitment to Action Track 1 is also further shown by the work of the ministry in combating bullying, sexual violence, and also intolerance in education. To meet the needs for qualified teachers in line with Action Track 3, the ministry has launched the Guru Penggerak or Master Teachers programs and introduced new regulations regarding teachers' recruitment and also professional development. These changes are focused on improving the quality of teachers' trainings and mentoring. Online platforms have also been developed to support learners and teachers to study, administer learnings, and also manage school finance. Among other initiatives in line with Action Track 4, the ministry recently launched its Merdeka Mengajar or Emancipated Teaching Platform as a medium to share materials, to share lesson plan, and also best practices. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as Indonesia has the honor to the G20 presidency, allow me also to share the commitment of the members of G20 Education Working Group to transform education. Inspired by the themes of this G20, Recover Together, Recover Stronger, the member countries will work hand in hand to emerge stronger and more resilient from the challenges imposed by COVID-19. Currently, we are also working on a report and compendium that captures good practices from the G20 member countries in transforming and improving their education system. There are 4 priority agendas that guide the discussions in the G20 Education Working Group. They are universal quality education, digital technologies in education, solidarity and partnerships, and the future of work post-COVID-19 are all in line with the 5 action tracks in the Transforming Education Summit. We sincerely hope that the valuable experience and initiative from the G20 member countries could be shared in the Transforming Education Summit in September and will inspire us all to recover together, recover stronger, to create a more equitable and sustainable future for all of us. It has always been our commitment to build bridges, to be part of the solutions, and to promote the spirit of cooperation. We invite you all to join us in that endeavor. We look forward to a successful education summit in New York. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Your Excellency. And as notified, our next speaker is the Distinguished Vice Minister of Higher Education and Science of Kazakhstan. And I would like the Republic of Serbia to get ready next.
Dear Ministers, Vice Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Minister of Science and Higher Education of the Republic of Kazakhstan, let me greet you all at this very important meeting, Transforming Education Pre-Summit. Today, Kazakhstan is included in the group of countries with a high level of Human Development Index and occupies 51st position among 189 participating countries. Kazakhstan ranked 35th in 2021 World Competitive Ranking by the rising 7 points higher compared to 2020 among 64 countries. The past couple of years was really challenging for all sectors of economy, and especially for the education system. And there are a lot of lessons that we have learned for these past 2 years that we should consider while we're working on this very important document, Transforming Education Strategies till 2030, and that will be presented and adopted later this year in September. The education system around the world is undergoing major changes, and including Kazakhstan. And for the pandemic years, we have seen that the higher education was the most prepared for these challenging situations. And when we look back, there are many challenges that I would like to mention a couple of them. So one of the things that important to talk about, that higher education was one of the well-prepared. It has a really good infrastructure, LMS system was in place, you know, the teachers had a needed sort of cyber pedagogy skills, and what they did, they really were able to scale up to the whole country. But when we look back, we see that having technological, you know, support and resources was not enough. And one of the challenges that our country faced is that problem with the internet and the poor internet connection. So as we can imagine that teachers are ready, LMS systems are in place, however, the knowledge and the needed information doesn't go to the end receiver, the students. And also another important point that we have learned that it's very important that economic status of the households is also something which should always consider. As we can see that families may have not have the needed like, you know, technical resources like, you know, the laptops and the cell phones and other, you know, needed devices. So that's why when we think about transforming education around the world for the next decade, we should, and when we pursue the high-tech solutions like, you know, the digital technologies, we need to consider the readiness of communities, the households, you know, financial situation and abilities to you know, to be able to receive the knowledge and follow those recommendations that we will come up later on this year. Another things that I would like to share and that we have learned for the past year, that the teachers, the students' perception of education has changed. And then it's sort of the pandemic sort of reset the whole understanding of what's the education, how we can approach to this. And it even opened an opportunity for us to adopt a law for the digital universities. You know, online universities is something that will be coming up in Kazakhstan. Before that, it was, people couldn't even understand how we can learn online, how that's possible. Now everything is sort of fresh, people are ready to do so. And this is really good opportunity for us as a whole community, you know, to set the goals that really will be achievable and that will transform the education system in the right direction. Another point that I would like to say that we have learned that the education is not just about knowledge, teaching and learning. It's also about the student's social life. It's about well-being. This is the place, the school and the universities are the place where people get the soft skills, they become mature, they become a part of the community. And that's why when we're talking about digital universities and all these high-tech approaches to the education, we should think about this and how we can provide this component so that we achieve the goal of the education system as well. And the final thing I would like to tell is that the pandemic have taught us that when the borders were closed, and the pandemic taught us that we need to bring actually the best universities, the best standards to our country. And one of the things we are trying to do, we are opening branches of the international universities so that the children in Kazakhstan will have access to the best universities, best education back home, so that they will have access to that. Well, and just in a conclusion, I would like to say that UNICEF Kazakhstan and UNESCO office has held national consultation on June 14th of this year that brought together representatives of the government, international organizations, communities, schools, and academia. And discussions during the national consultation has happened across 5 priorities. And the first priority is inclusive, safe schools, focusing on well-being of their students. That includes inclusive school environment, safe school environment, and schools focusing on well-being of their students. The second priority that we have identified is learning and skills for life and work and sustainable development, including curriculum that develops and advances skills for life. And the third priority, teachers and teaching. That includes addressing the deficit of qualified teachers, provision of quality pre- and in-service, teacher training and professional development, and teaching profession and leadership in teaching. And fourth priority is digital education. That includes further training provision for teachers and school administrators and online safety. And finally, fifth priority is financing of education. This national consultation took place in recognition of the important role that education plays in human rights and foundation for peace and sustainable development. The consultations took place in anticipation of Transforming Education Summit in September of this year, convened by the UN Secretary General. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. So our next speaker is the Distinguished State Secretary at the Ministry of Education, Science and Technological Development of the Republic of Serbia. And I request that Venezuela get ready.
Thank you very much. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, Ministers, Vice Ministers, Deputy Ministers, my name is Ana Maria Vicek, and I am State Secretary at the Ministry of Education, Science and Technological Development of the Republic of Serbia, and I was also the convener of the national consultations that we ran in Serbia as preparations for this very important pre-summit. It is my utmost pleasure and honor to be greeting you in the name of our first Vice President and the Minister of Education, Science and Technological Development, Mr. Branko Ružić. From April to June 2022, The Ministry of Education, Science and Technological Development of the Republic of Serbia has run national consultations as a preparation for this pre-summit with over 1,000 participants. Among the participants, we had teachers, educators, professors, youth, students, children, adolescents, school leaders, parents, governmental institutions, non-governmental organizations, scientific community, academia, research institutes. It was a very wide national consultation process. Luckily, just over a few years ago, in Serbia, we had a similar national consultation process as preparation of the national strategy for education development until 2030, which was adopted by the government of Serbia in June 2021 with a 3-year action plan. So when I say luckily, we had those consultations as well. They were very similar to the ones that we just had a few weeks or months ago. Please let me mention COVID, the pandemic that was mentioned previously as well. It has also taught us very important things, 3 important things. One of the important things that COVID has taught us is that education is important. Right after the health system, all eyes were pointed on education. It means that education is important. We have learned that we have much more potential than we thought. We had digital education even prior to that, but the acceleration of the system was amazing during the COVID situation. And we have also learned that vulnerable families, vulnerable children are even more vulnerable in a crisis situation. We are still in a survival mode after the COVID pandemic situation. It is really hard to think about transforming the education system in a crisis or in a survival mode. However, we have several areas that we think that are very important when thinking about transforming education. First, to further strengthen inclusive, equitable, safe, and healthy schools. Second, to enrich curricula to provide learning and skills for life, work, and sustainable development, while developing competences, values, skills, attitudes, knowledge, and critical thinking, not only relying on specific subjects, but cross-curricular competences. To have teachers step out of their comfort zones, step out of their own subjects. Third, improve the system of initial teacher training, professional development, and in-service teacher training, not only digital competences, but working on teacher-parent relationships or teacher-student communication. 4, digital learning and transformation, not only developing teachers' competencies and school infrastructures, but also supporting families of poor or marginalized children who cannot afford it. And 5th, which was also mentioned previously, to increase the financing of education system. The Republic of Serbia is committed to these goals. The Republic of Serbia is committed to the transformation of the education system. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. And our next speaker, and last on the list, is the Distinguished Vice Minister of Educational Communities and Union with the People of the Ministry of Popular Power for Education in Venezuela. The floor is yours.
Apreciados ministros y demás.
Ministers and other distinguished authorities, I extend to you the greetings of the President of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro Moros, and the Minister for Popular Power of Education, Yelitse Santaella. Indeed, we are looking towards the summit Transforming Education. Transform means, in etymological terms, metamorphosis of something. Give it another sense of being. And right now, in a world that is uncertain and dark, we are also in a world full of opportunities. Indeed, to transform education, we need to fight against poverty, inequality, particularly amongst the most vulnerable. In order to transform education, we need to transform the very structures of this world. The inequalities between rich and poor, and between countries that are developing and developed. And the only way to build a new inclusive educational model and one that is transformative is to empower the people, particularly through the educational process. We can all agree that everybody deserves quality education. We need more love and we need more benefits for people in general, and that can only be done through access to education. Education is a fundamental human right. It should not be a privilege of a happy few or something that is locked away in a golden box, that's like the one that may be in the safe of multinational companies. In Venezuela, we have suffered two terrible pandemics which have caused death and suffering to our people. The COVID-19 pandemic, which has infected everyone in the world, and also the imperialist pandemic that has imposed itself on Venezuela through unilateral coercive measures. It has tried to destroy without success our economy, but it has caused suffering to our people. Indeed, this has impacted the wages and the well-being of students and of teachers, and also the well-being of students. However, this pandemic is being defeated by Nicolas Maduro and by our people. Venezuela is, thanks to its holistic policies at a human level, one of the countries in the world that has the lowest incident and mortality rate when it comes to COVID-19, and this one of the lowest in the world. We have quality, free and fair education at all levels in our country. Therefore, we are fulfilling the objectives of SDG 4. We are putting in place plans so that students want to come back to school. We are giving our support to local and community stakeholders. We are promoting international cooperation and a culture of peace. We would also like to thank countries such as Russian Federation, China, Turkey, India and many Arabic countries for their support. Indeed, we have a school food program that is free and it extends to 93% of children. We also have been able to provide students with 6 million pupils with computers. We have also been able to plant over 1 million trees, therefore showing our commitment to the environment. And we are also making sure that we can, and we've also carried out a major national consultation in terms of education, in which 170,000 people participated: students, teachers, the private sector, foundations, NGOs, government workers, government experts, local representatives, and representatives of UN agencies in Venezuela. The results, the preliminary results, indicate that 80% of those present believe that the unilateral coercive measures have had a clear impact on us being able to reach SDG 4. But it's also believed that 80% of people also believe that the way forward is to dialogue in order to overcome these challenges. Indeed, we need to make sure that education for all is a veritable turning point in order for all of us to have more knowledge, more love and human happiness. Thank you.
Now, please allow me to give a warm thank you to all our speakers this evening. Your statements have been inspiring and give promise to an exciting lead up to the Transforming Education Summit in September, and not least, a prosperous path towards 2030. We have arrived at the end of our session. The statements we have heard have been inspiring and provided concrete commitments to how to strengthen education, how to steer the digital transformation, support teachers, prepare for a more sustainable future, and unlock the potential in every person to contribute to collective well-being and our shared home. I would also like to remind you that ministers participating in the pre-summit virtually have been invited to submit a pre-recorded video statement, which will be published on the summit website. Thank you all for coming to this session, a session which I think has set the tone and paved the way towards the Transforming Education Summit in September. Thank you to our ministers for being here with us today at UNESCO. Let's join hands, those of us that are here, in applauding their commitment and hard work. Thank you all.